Hi, this video is about AI regulations. What will they be and how will they affect AI progress? I think this is pretty important for the people out there who are interested in where AI is going to go specifically in terms of business and what will businesses offer you, but also what kind of businesses can you build and where the risks lie. When things are heavily regulated, that can significantly affect the business opportunities. So that's what this is about. Let's get into it. There were 3 witnesses, including Sam Altman, Christina McGubbery at IBM, and then Gary Marcus from NYU. And there's a link. I'll put a link in the description. This is the actual Senate link, and that'll take you to a page where you can actually download the testimonies, which I'll show in just a second. So let's actually jump into, so Sam's testimony was longer. Now, these downloads are not the actual things that they said. That, at least that's what I'm thinking. They look like they're prepared documents, sort of like, here's my prepared statement. So this isn't everything that they said. This isn't all the back and forth. There's a 2.5-hour video on that page as well that you can watch, and there's quite a few other summaries of what they said. But I'm going to key on a few things here, and then with the other 2, I'll show you what I'm going to do with those in just a second. It was kind of interesting. GPT-4 was able to help with that. But if you scroll down to page 11, towards the end, this is where he talks about, like, you know, kind of this is kind of the wrapping up the conclusions. And yes, they are like, please regulate me, number 1, and they're already working with people. That's what they're saying. They're willing to work people, and then they give a list of a few things that they think are critical. And so they need to have safety requirements, testing, and evaluation prior to release, above crucial thresholds. And so I guess this is also, again, safety requirements. So we actually have licensing here, licensing and registration requirements. This is concerning to me. I'll tell you about why in a minute. So they're getting safety from another angle here, which is sort of the safety standards. Sort of like an elevator has a safety standard, AI should have safety standards. I'm kind of curious how they'll implement that, but that makes a lot of sense, and I think is going to be less restrictive overall than kind of licensing and registration. I'll tell you the kind of the downside to doing this, especially if they do it kind of awkwardly. This is sort of a call for, hey, let's the whole world work together on that. On this, probably fell on deaf ears, to be honest. This is kind of funny how just calling out as they see it. 6 months ago, no one heard of ChatGPT, and now it's a household name. So who knows what's in store for the near future for us as well. Really smart, I think, the way that Sam Altman's playing this. He seems to be genuine, so I'm not sure it's like necessarily like a play, but I'm sure that he knows that these are kind of the right answers in the first place. He's trying to present himself that way without actually giving up too much position, and he thinks they're doing it the right way, and we'll see who agrees. I'm sure some people disagree, and Gary actually criticized OpenAI pretty heavily in his testimony, as I'll show you in a second. None of this is surprising. This actually, I've listened to Sam talk about these things at various times. Everything in this is very consistent with what he's been saying. So at least he's consistent. Let's look at, actually what I was able to do was put the other 2 into GPT-4. Oh, actually, I accidentally did GPT 3.5 on this one. And have it summarize it. It's not formatted very well. But I think hers comes down to what she said, like a precision approach. She's like, hey, not all AIs are the same, and blah, blah, blah. You're going to have to look at them through different eyes with each different kind of situation or type of model. And so some of them with higher risks need higher regulation. Some with lower risks need lower regulation. And I think she also calls for transparency in hers as well. So this is the NYU professor. GPT-4 did a better job there. Hold on. So Marcus was a lot more critical of OpenAI at various places. I think that the way that OpenAI did kind of like their business, nonprofit to capped profit, is confusing to some people and seems a little, maybe even a little bit sketch. But to be honest, it seems like they're really trying to do right, do good. Now that's how a lot of companies start. Even Google, I can't remember what their motto originally was, just like do good or something simple like that. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, but basically when you get to a certain amount of size and power, it's kind of hard to keep that as an organization. As Google is a little bit more of maybe a mixed record. I'm not commenting on anything specific in terms of Google being like all good or all bad, but there's definitely some things that you can look at over the years that are like, didn't exactly act completely honorably there. And OpenAI does have a vast amount of control, and so it is okay for him to be concerned. And I'm pretty sure Sam probably just sat there and took it on this one, because he's open to criticism, and that's good. One thing that stood out to me was his clinical trial safety evaluation. This is pretty concerning for me as an AI software developer, because this just how much it costs to go through clinical trials. It's just massive, and it brings me to actually one of my points, and I'm not sure if it's here. Well, I'll just put it here. The fact that this is stifling for competition, because the more regulations you have, the more it's harder for smaller competitors to come in and try and challenge the established leaders of a market. Just because of the threshold of money, raw cash you need to just get off the ground. So, for example, the clinical trials, I can't, if let's say I'm the best doctor, the best chemist, the best biologist in the world, I'm the best at all those things in the world, and I'm all by myself, and I'm not like a billionaire. How could I make a new drug? I just can't. It's just, I don't think that you need all this money. I think, maybe there's some ghetto ways to do it for like a few $1,000s for some types of things. My guess is no, that just the sheer volume of legal and procedural things that you have to follow has a minimum threshold of money to get started. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat here that I'll mention with regards to the opportunity window later. The licensing, the clinical trials, this has me concerned more so than safety to some degree. Like, obviously they need to be safe, and like the self-driving cars has a different safety threshold and standards versus an AI chatbot or something. Sam mentioned potential international cooperation. I think this is possible, but unlikely. External independent reviews. This is similar to licensing in a way where they're like, okay, if you're going to make this, we have to send a guy that doesn't work for you to review, and basically an inspector. This is again similar to licensing. I think this does put a little bit of a threshold, although it depends on how it's done. It could be huge, a huge cost to people, and it's just kind of awkward to like schedule somebody and to have to justify and have to explain, especially with technology. Like, how does this really work? How many people in the world are there that can really understand how something really works? Understand whether or not it should be qualified for licensing? Did they pass the clinical trials? When I review it externally, how good? Is it doing what it says it's doing? That's a big bottleneck, I think, in terms of like, how are we going to find enough people that are actually going to be able to do this? So I think that if they go too aggressively on this, it's going to be really hard to fulfill, and it could even put a stamp on even like big companies getting things, because there just might not be enough people to do the reviews. The lady from IBM mentioned multiple times precision, and I think it's not just like one AI thing. I think that's smart. Definitely, there needs to be some complexity to it. I know we always want to try to do something simple and understandable, but that just won't make sense with AI. Transparency. I think this makes sense to a significant degree, especially from the angle of like, hey, we want to know if we're talking to an AI. That's a reasonable thing for people to ask for and to people to insist upon. That they aren't tricked into thinking that they're talking to a human. Then there's another angle of transparency of like open source, share your algorithms. I don't know if they're going to be able to enforce anything like that. I don't really see it just would be pretty unprecedented for every technology company to have to show all their technology all the time. I'm not sure that's very feasible. So on those two different fronts, I think you kind of have different responses. I think there's also a chance for, probably not for the U.S. government, but probably for some governments, of just no AI. Like no AI development, no AI products. You can't if your website uses AI, you can't put it in our country. I see some possibilities like that. This is kind of done with cloning. Although cloning is a very different scenario in that it's not obvious that what's the benefit to society of being able to clone people. I guess there's potential that you clone somebody super awesome who did awesome things for the world. I mean, it's maybe there's some scientific understanding when you can run somebody's genetic profile 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 times and see kind of the results and get some answers on kind of nature versus nurture. But those are still kind of like not like major obvious benefits, but AI has these just huge obvious benefits, curing cancer and stuff like that. Just especially just from a medical standpoint, AI is going to, and already has to some degree, do amazing things for us as a species. And so I think that this is unlikely to happen in most places, but it's still possible. All right, timelines. This is actually really important. So, and I'm going to speak from a long-time United States citizen. I don't know exactly how this works in other places. I hope it. I expect it's different in some ways and it's the same in other ways. But basically, if this becomes a partisan issue, which means that like the two sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, don't agree, then who knows how long this could take? It could be 10 years and they still haven't done it, or they've done just like the tiniest little bit. What seems most likely right now, at least currently, it seems to be bipartisan in terms of like, hey, this is crazy powerful, let's regulate it. Both parties seem to be on board on that train, and maybe that's because the different media zones haven't taken hold of it and made their collective judgment that our team is deciding that this is good or bad. And so that does speed up the timeline quite a bit. Maybe 12 months would be like absolute minimum to when we could start to see something coming out from the government. I think that'd be pretty fast, to be honest, to get it all done, like by May of 2024, to have some sort of regulatory body. It probably takes at least probably more like 2 to 3 years, I think, before they really get it done. But maybe they could speed it up. Maybe something bad happens or whatever with AI, and they all agree, hey, let's do something right now and let's prioritize this. I do expect. Here's kind of like my expectations for regulations. I do expect it to be ham-handed and slow. So ham-handed is just sort of awkward, like they cause a lot of problems with the initial sets of regulations, and they need to be tuned quite a bit from what they first come out with in ways that hurt businesses, hurt certain markets, and definitely slow things down in terms of innovation to some degree. I'd be surprised if they didn't hinder things at least a little bit. And to some degree, that's fine. And you just there's a trade-off there for safety and for making sure that there's responsibility. It does kind of slow things down a little bit, and that's fine to some degree. You just don't want it to be like really put the brakes on it, in my opinion. But also the decisions will be slow. Part of this is also, the U.S. House turns over every 2 years completely. They all have to get reelected, and so that can take something that was about to be completed and just it starts all over. And maybe now it's something that was bipartisan is now partisan for whatever reason. I do expect that like safety regulations will come out sooner. Those will be a little bit easier. You might not even need to pass laws for that. Just like the executive branch can just say, hey, we're just going to implement these safety measures, and from now on you have to do this, or we'll do this. Transparency to some degree. I do think that they'll probably have something pretty quick on, hey, if you're an AI bot, you have to say you're an AI bot. You can't pretend to be a human. I do not think that this will be internationally agreed. Maybe the European Union will be able to all band together and agree. But in terms of like all the major powers, China, the United States, European countries, all the biggest, most powerful countries in the world agreeing on here is our standard set of regulations for AI. I think that's extremely unlikely, which presents some problems. I do think that there'll be mixed licensing. Thank goodness. I think that they'll have. It won't be just all right. Everybody has to go through a license. There's going to hopefully be sort of different levels of licensing, different types of licensing for different types of AIs, but also just sort of like the size and the total impact, so that small companies can come in and test the market without having to raise $50 million. I think that if that's the way they go, if they go really hard to where you literally can't even do the basic paperwork legally and all that and procedurally without $10 million plus, that's going to make it a lot harder for this to move forward. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't think it is overall, but I definitely would not like to see that, because that would potentially be against my self-interest, as I am working on building AI right now. Sort of like wanted regulations. I have alluded to this a lot. I think they should be very careful, and they don't want to stifle smaller companies. I think that should be one of their a huge consideration. Yes, safety is important. Yes, there needs to be some amount of regulation, but let's not go too hard on it, and let's be very aware of smaller companies, because I don't think it's good for the country, for the world, if small companies are stifled and really there's just a handful of big companies, and those are the only ones that can really afford to actually make and develop and work on AI. I don't think that's good. I would like to see international competition, although I don't, international cooperation, although I don't expect there to be that much. All right, opportunity window. I think that there is a bit of a window here for companies to come in and hopefully and get something in before the first major sets of regulations, at least in the United States, come into play or implemented or started or whatever. Because I do think that after that, it's just going to be harder. It's just going to be more expensive to get off the ground. You can't just download one of these other models and use that as a base or something like that. It's not that simple. There's a lot more to it than that. It's still kind of expensive already, even without any regulations. Machine learning engineers are in high demand, and they're not cheap, and they know that they have high value. So getting just that by itself, but also there's just a lot of complexities to this and software development in general. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So the opportunity window, if you can not be the tiny person, I don't think you necessarily, a business would necessarily have to be like $1 billion business, but it would have to have some sort of traction, I think, before these regulations hit, or the regulations could actually be crippling. It just adds significant cost to a company, and that can be hard for them to overcome. But also just, if you're able to if somebody's able to build a new company in this window, they might actually be able to influence how the regulations are implemented to some degree, or they'll just have more power and control in general in let's say become very popular in the market as a whole. And so I do think that it's just the lower cost, essentially, if it really comes down to it, lower cost and lower risk during this period. It's going to get higher cost and higher risk in some ways. Maybe there's less expensive models that come out. Maybe there'll be more software developers at a lower price. I can't really speak to that exactly. But I do think that if you are looking to build a large language model or build some sort of big AI model, I would say go for it. Do it now. Like don't wait. Don't hesitate. This is, I think, to me personally, I think it's an opportunity of a lifetime to just this window right now to build AI software in 2023. I think that it's a unique place in time. And so I'm going to go for it. I hope you do too. Let me know how it goes for you. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you like and subscribe this video. And I hope to see one of you who watch this video with an amazing AI business sometime in the future. If so, hit me up. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.